Welcome to Grappling with a Gray, a forum for promoting the development of an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Yonason Goldson, and please join me welcoming my guest today. I have Mira Kolek-Griffiths, who's a transformational leadership coach, guiding her clients to mental clarity and helping them cast aside limiting beliefs. Peter Griffiths is a leadership and creativity coach. He and his wife, Mira, are co-founders of the Mind Takeaway and co-hosts of the Mind Takeaway podcast, and joining us in the darkness of night from here in Berlin, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 11 p.m. here.
Yeah, well, thank you for your endurance. And Brooke Erol, who is an author, advisor, and coach who supports leaders in their journey to catch up with our times, to grow their business without sacrificing the well-being of their people, so profit becomes a natural byproduct. Today, our ethical challenge has to do with education, and we felt that it's proper to acknowledge and empathize with the victims of the recent shooting. Our discussion of ethics is one that is so deeply connected with culture, with society, with mental health, with community, that it's exactly the type of horror that we are trying to contribute to putting an end to through building a healthier culture, a culture where these things simply are not part of our reality the way they have come to be. So while we may or may not be addressing this in the course of this conversation, we really do want to express our deep pain, commiserating with the victims, and our resolution to do whatever we can to contribute to a healthier society.
Yeah.
So let's
thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for acknowledging that. Thank you. It's all at top of our minds. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, we can't. It's hard to know what to say, but we can't say nothing.
True.
So let's pivot from there and go into what I think will be a somewhat related issue about education and educational culture. So here is today's ethical challenge. Last year, the inaugural Dash for Cash event at a junior hockey game in Sioux Falls featured 10 local teachers scrambling on their hands and knees on a rug at center ice, scooping up $5,000 in donated $1 bills and stuffing them into their shirts and pockets. The promotion encouraged teachers to collect as much money as they could to help fund their classroom projects. Video of the teachers jostling to grab dollar bills quickly sparked outrage nationwide. Some critics said the stunt turned school teachers' chronic funding shortage into a public spectacle. Others compared it to Squid Game, the South Korean TV series about desperate people who compete in deadly children's games to win money. The organizers apologized. Full disclosure, I have never seen an episode of Squid Game. I can't speak to it from personal experience. However, it seems to have become incredibly popular and seems to sort of blend this bizarre desire of parents to help their children by putting themselves in mortal danger. So our question for today is, in an increasingly voyeuristic society, how do we weigh using spectacle in pursuit of noble causes against the loss of personal dignity? The floor is open.
You want to start first, or can I just say my first impression when I watched that, maybe?
Please
Peter
jump
and
right
Mira,
in.
is okay? Okay. So I wasn't aware of this until you brought to our attention, Yonason, but like when I watched it for the first time, my feelings and my thought was like, oh my God, like how we done to our teachers, because they have so little money. And I have teacher friends of myself where they have to contribute to the classroom needs from their own pockets, although they don't make enough money anyways. So just to see them scrambling for money, I never thought that's degrading for them. But I felt like, oh my God, like what did we do that like made them go and jump? And the second thing was to think like, would they have done it for themselves? If they were told like, this money is for you, go and jump and get as much as you can, or is it only for the contributing to the classroom that they did this? So those were my two first reactions and my thoughts. So what about you, Mira and Peter? I want to hear from you before I move forward.
Shall I go?
Yeah, go for it.
When I heard you explaining it, and when I read the post before today's conversation, it was, to me, it looks like this is what we've made. I mean, this is the reflection of society in which we live today, and what we make normal, it becomes moral. People invented what's moral, what isn't, and I think we can also, I remember the time when during the war in ex-Yugoslavia. This is a time when I was growing up. I remember before war, we had kids wanted to be pilots, they wanted to be doctors, they wanted to be engineers and all of that. And then during the war and after the war, when country didn't have money, when country was under sanctions and all of that, some other criminals became famous and cool people, and then kids wanted to be particular criminal. Kids wanted to be they wanted to be football players. I'm not saying that they are criminal, but it's very different things that become. So everything that brings money is moral, it's okay, but whatever doesn't, it's like, so I guess that changes. So that's what was coming through my mind as I was listening to you.
Before you add in, Peter, if I may, you just, I think you're making a couple of really interesting points here, that I think many of us believe that morality is something that descends from a higher authority. However, in a society, whatever becomes the norm defines the popular conception of morality. And so, I spent 23 years as a high school teacher. My wife is still a special ed teacher in middle school. And there are times, more times for me, are times for her, when we're just so frustrated. It's hard not to become embittered. It's hard not to feel resentful that we're not given the resources, we're not given the support, we're not given the compensation that makes us able to really do our jobs well. And it's not just teachers. There are people leaving the teaching profession or not going into it in the first place. Same thing with medicine. We've made things so difficult for doctors. Law enforcement, we've made things so difficult for them. And what's going to happen to a society where we start having shortages of educators, of medical practitioners, of law enforcement officers? Where are we going to be then? And how can we hold people accountable for the occasional misbehavior that we hear about, and at the same time support the large majority that are really essential to a healthy society? So, Peter, I didn't give you a chance. Please jump in.
No, good reflection. So, yeah, I would agree. It's almost like we've de-evolved. And the reason to say that is because, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's normalizing it being okay for education systems, especially public school systems, to struggle. I mean, even in the private side of things, it's a money game now. It's like working for a corporate company. And like both of you, we have friends who are teachers and in the education system, and it breaks my heart because they're well educated, you know, they really love their job, and they just don't want to be teachers anymore. And it's not because they don't love working with young people, far from it. It's just that they don't really get to teach. You know, aside from the money, there's a lot of measurement and administration and red tape that gets in the way. And sadly, for all of this measurement, and I can only speak about the UK system, even though we live in Germany for the last 8 years, I'm not really in the education system, so I don't really want to speculate. But what we know from the UK system is that it just gets in the way, and sadly, teachers just burn out. And it's not because they're doing too much teaching. They're actually not really getting to, you know, light the kids up. As you know, correct me if I'm wrong, when we were younger, that's what a good teacher would do, you know.
Yeah.
That was my first reflection, at least.
True. And then like you said, it's not because they just don't like teaching anymore. It's because of all the other factors that we made it so hard for them to be a teacher. And like Yonason, you were saying, we were doing it to other professions too, but I can't think of another importance thing than health and education are the two pillars of any society. If those are not going well, you are scrambling and you're not doing like a fair job for all your citizens. And we need the teachers. And just even reflecting back on what happened yesterday, now we put them even in a much harder place where they have to protect the kids from getting killed. And then they're getting classes and some other guidance to how to protect them, get under the seats or the desk. That is insane, right? Now we, on top of everything and not paying them well, having the curriculums like be kind of a bureaucracy and not giving them the freedom to be themselves. Now we add another huge layer of responsibility to them. So of course they're gonna leave, or of course they're gonna go and jump to get that money on the floor because they do it out of their duty, I think. If it was for them, of course, I don't know the answer to that. If people were told, okay, this is like so many thousands of dollars in between the hockey game, go and get as much as money you can grab, maybe they wouldn't have done it for themselves. Maybe they would, I don't know the answer, but you would do it more because of your obligation to your job, to your students, is how I felt. That's why it's such a hard place to be. And then people are saying all the things that shows up as really bad on paper and on the video. So it's such a hard place to be as a teacher.
Yeah, my wife was really upset with the news coverage and some of the comments being made, particularly the police and the medical people being celebrated as heroes, which they definitely are, but no mention of the teachers.
Yes.
It seems to be a profession that is taken for granted, and it's, you know, you have these TV shows, these reality shows. I can't say I've ever watched them. I just remember the name of one, Fear Factor, getting people to do things that are pretty demeaning and humiliating for the chance of money, for notoriety. And that breeds a lack of dignity, of personal self-respect. And, you know, so what you said, Brooke, it's an interesting, I hadn't even thought about it in those terms. You know, would they have done this for themselves? Well, we'd certainly like to hope not. But what makes it complicated is, you know, they're really doing it in a good cause.
Yes.
They're really doing it for a noble purpose. And yet, is it worth it in the end?
Go on, you had something.
No, go for it.
No, you know what other profession that I'm thinking, I was thinking about it, you know, when pandemic started, all jobs could have been done, lots of jobs could have been done in person, online. But okay, we live in a society where we need to, you know, go shopping, not you know, we don't go and make our food, you know, we don't grow our food, most of us don't. But for example, people that grow our food, And what interesting thought I had was what would happen if people that clean our streets and take our garbage away are actually not there? Like, and that's a profession that we really dismiss. Like, those are people that we don't even see on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about New York City when they go on strike.
Yeah.
Apparently it's not a place you want to be.
It's a
Yeah.
smelly place, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what is the thing? I mean, I again go back to, what kind of society have we created where everything is okay? I mean, I'm looking back at the TV shows, and I think a lot of it comes from, this need for attention. I mean, before, say 50 years ago, in order to be a celebrity, even 20 years ago, in order to be a celebrity or be a famous person, you had to do something important. You had to be a really good actor or a good singer or a scientist, or, did something nice, big and important. But now what you have to do is just go on one of these shows and do something really stupid or crazy. And then, that's what makes you a celebrity now.
I came back to America after 10 years abroad, and it didn't take long before I kept hearing the name Kardashian.
Yeah.
And I asked, well, who are these people?
Yeah.
And the answer I got is they're famous for being famous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that mean? And it took me a long time. I'm still not sure I understand it, but it wasn't a phenomenon that existed when I left the country.
Yeah.
When I came
And
back.
and they take so much airtime too. Like, and there's so many good things we can use this time on TV and shows, and then the same thing applies, Mira, like not only on TV shows, but on social media too. You just can do one little thing and then people love it. And then you have millions of followers. Done, finish, you're a celebrity. So you don't have to do anything, or you don't have to have a special gift almost, like, and I'm not saying it for everyone, so not generalizing, of course. But yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, Yonason, you were going to say something, I guess. Sorry.
Well, no, you just reminded me that my wife has told me that dealing with middle school kids who used to want to be firemen and astronauts, and now they want to be YouTubers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The whole culture has taken a shift. But Mira, when you were speaking, you reminded me I was at a carnival for an elementary school a number of years ago, and it was a fundraiser. And they had one of those dunking booths where you throw a ball, and if you hit the target, whoever's ever sitting in the chair gets dunked.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the principal of the school was sitting in the dunking booth.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remembered this right now. I remember the time thinking, I understand why he's doing it. But it just rubs me the wrong way, and it's the same thing I feel when I see these teachers scrambling on the ice for dollar bills.
Yeah, I always put myself into their shoes, and then there is some of this invitation, and you're a teacher, and maybe you really don't have any extra to put out of pocket, and this is something that you're invited to. I really feel like I said it before, but like comes from obligation or responsibility. And when I watched the videos afterwards, like when they were like counting the dollars, and some of the times when they were done with it, they had good smiles. They were proud of themselves to get money for their children. So I'm sure, I feel like, I'm not sure, but I feel like the people who have organized this had good intentions too, but they didn't visualize it probably, how it's gonna look. And it doesn't look good to be on their knees and everything. And that's why they had to apologize, but it wasn't well thought through, is my opinion, at least.
Peter? Nothing?
Just listening and reflecting, really. Well, it just, I want to rewind back a little bit. It just goes back to, society. It's systemic, how we normalize things nowadays. And again, it's not that I'm judging anything, it's just that I'm always deeply curious. It's like, how did we end up in a situation where, yeah, I mean, again, we have had talks with teachers and we've reflected on this kind of stuff. And again, it's assumptions, isn't it? Because we're not teachers ourselves. But yeah, I mean, if I put myself in the shoes of a teacher, if I didn't have the funding and there was a way of making sure that all my kids had, you know, money to make the lessons better and more engaging and anything, then I guess you do what you need to do. And it's interesting how people see it as demoralizing or not. But for me, I'm more curious about how the hell did we get there in the first place? Because
True.
how is it so normal? That's such an important role in society. And teachers individually, collectively, whole schools have to grapple and beg to just get enough funding to be able to provide a proper education. And we're talking about Western countries here.
Yes.
And again, if I think back of and again, I've got a limited worldview of these things. I didn't grow up, for example, in Asia, but I spent a lot of time in Nepal, for example. And I got to see how heartbreaking it was that they, you know, kids on the whole didn't get proper access to education there either. But again, they make do and they do what they need to do. But when we're talking about rich Western countries like the US of A, like the UK, like, you know, the European Union, etc., and I see that people are going without, this just doesn't make sense, you know.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Again, me going back to the time of not having. For example, during the war, we were refugees, and my mom was somebody who used to work in the office all her life. You know, she was a director of, I think it was accounting or something related to the accounting in a police. And when we were refugees, when there was no jobs and there was no money, she was working on a field for a couple of years until she found a different job and stuff. And because it was hard time for everyone. And that really taught me one thing, you know, people can do things that they never thought they would do and survive and come out of it, and it's fine, you know. And there is no job that is amoral for a human being. And I think that that's one of the points, that, you know, there is no a bad job. You know, if I had to go tomorrow and clean toilets, it's not demoral. It doesn't minimize me as a person. It doesn't minimize me to who I am. You know, I'll rather do that than go and kill somebody. It's what Peter just said. It's, why are we as societies not really providing because we can? You know, it's are we doing it for a show? Are we doing it for visibility? Are we doing it for some other trivial reasons that are there for a promotion and marketing? Rather than really our needs. So
yeah.
You well, we'll wrap up this segment in just a moment, but you remind me that there was an essayist by the name of Roger Rosenblatt, and I think it was in 1984 that he was commissioned to write a letter that was put in a time capsule that would be opened 100 years later. And it's worth looking up. I think it's called A Letter to the Future, but you can certainly find it. And it's really a masterpiece. But one line in particular has always stayed with me. He said, "We're learning that democracy can kill democracy." There is a profound danger in freedom and in liberty and in an open society. And you know, capitalism is probably the only economic system that can really work, and yet it carries serious danger. You know, it was in the 1960s, they say that the average CEO earned about 50 times the average employee's wage. Now it's 1,000 times. And that degree of disparity of wealth is not stabilizing for a society. People feel that the system's rigged against them. They feel they're not recognized. They feel they're not compensated. And when that happens, people lose faith and confidence in the system. And you start having hugely destabilizing events like those that I hope we'll talk about more in the next segment. So there has to be a balance, you know, and my friends who are ardent capitalists will say, well, that's just the free market. But it's more complicated than that. And it's not free when you don't have the kind of upward mobility for your average person, as opposed to your outlier who happens to create a viral video and suddenly has his whole life taken care of for him. So there's a lot of soul searching that we have to do individually and as a society to try to figure out how to achieve some kind of balance between personal freedom and social responsibility. And that's not a problem we're going to solve in the next half hour, but it's definitely something that should be continuously on our minds. So I'd like to ask each of you to give us a parting thought. Brooke, will you start us off?
I'm a why person, so I definitely want to go to the root of everything. What we see just in a couple of seconds is so rooted on other things that happened and what got us here, which we talked about a little bit today, but that's what I would say. We have to look at the root of the problem and not do band-aid solutions because they don't stick and it's not long-term. So that's my last parting thought.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Yeah.
Mira?
You know, I think that, like what I said on the very beginning, humans have created society and humans have created all of it, and humans have created capitalism and socialism and all of that. And I think it's all process of learning, and you know, we do something and then we stop doing it and we start doing something else. We will stop doing what we are doing now and we will do something else. And I think it's just really creating awareness without judgment of others and ourselves. It's what's going to take this process maybe a little bit faster. Yeah, I think it's just really awareness that we have a choice, you know, and that's that freedom that you have mentioned. And I think that's the only freedom that we have. It's choosing one over another. If we have it. I don't know.
Peter, you have the last word.
Yeah, just I ask if we can all reflect on maybe one question is, you know, wouldn't we all want access to a basic and good education system, regardless of where we live on the planet? And if the answer is yes, you know, what can we do to get there? Yeah.
Well, thank you for a challenging, but I think rewarding conversation. Thank you to Brooke Erol, to Mira Kulik-Griffiths and Peter Griffiths. Appreciate you being with me, and hope you'll join me again. For those of you in the audience, if you'd like to suggest an ethical scenario or dilemma for discussion, please go to my website, yonasongoldson.com, and use the contact box to submit your proposal. If it's something that's intriguing, we'll definitely take it up. If you are a Grappling with the Gray member, please use the community link to participate in a follow-up Q&A and continue discussion. If you're not a member, please go to gwtg.live. That's gwtg.live, where you can sign up for a free 30-day trial and enjoy member benefits. Please join us again next week for another ethical discussion as our panel grapples with the gray.
Thank you.